Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I have a return guest on. I'm very happy to have Amy Palacios on. She was last on season 3, episodes 147, 165, and 179, season 4, episodes 134, 145, and 150. Season 5, episodes 22, 70, 73, 83, and 186. And the last time she was on, we were talking about threats of contempt on Sabrina Berry and herself, Amy Palacios. I welcome you to the podcast. And how are you? And what's
Hey,
going
Marianne.
on? Hey.
Well, we had like a monumental moment this week because we filed our 1983 lawsuit. So there was 6 of us on the lawsuit that all have similar problems with our violation. It has, the Violence Against Women's Act have been violated in the court system where we all had violence against us and then have been, falsely taken of things, whether it be our kids, money, our time, and it continues like roundabout circus in the courtroom. So we're trying to stop this monopoly behind the scenes and give some accountability to the people that are training these judges and training these lawyers to behave as they are. They're just creating whatever scenario that they want to create, never letting the actual victim or the person that is the protective parent ever present their case, or even give evidence on their side. They just create whatever bogus
False narrative.
evidence. Yeah.
Right.
And that is an extrinsic fraud because they're suppressing all the evidence.
And they're doing this with mothers and, protective mothers and protective fathers, and they don't seem to care. They're just not presenting the evidence, and the judge doesn't want to look at it.
Right.
Yeah, it's you've been through like a lot, and they seem to just want more money out of you. And now they're going to hold you in criminal contempt on Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, they've attempted to hold me in criminal contempt, which was dismissed, but I was given a civil contempt back in February, but nobody's written that order. And the only order that was supposedly written was a criminal contempt order, even though that was dismissed. So what happens is they'll drag out when they write the order. So it was supposed to be written in February, and now it's November. So Jay White wrote an order at the beginning of November claiming that I'm in criminal contempt when it was civil contempt for not paying his lawyer fees, the opposing counsel. So Jay White is this man in Cabarrus County that is wearing multiple hats. He's an attorney. He was at one point over the school board, over the county contract, over DSS child support, DSS child welfare. He even was at one point a county commissioner and had to be stepped down from that for, at that point it was conflict of interest that the SBI made him step down. And he's still behaving in the same way. So he's lost every contract except for being over DSS child welfare. So, which should have been the first one he lost, not the last.
Right.
And then, so our big issue is the extortion in the courts, the continued extortion, which goes alongside with this extrinsic fraud, because it's fraud of just for example, back in August of 2022, I was given an indigent order by Judge Knut's.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by that time, I had been ordered to pay child support, $2,800 a month to my first ex-husband, $70,000 to my second ex-husband for equitable distribution, the one that went to jail for beating me up. So this is where they violate the Violence Against Women's Act, because it's illegal to have to pay somebody that beat you up.
Right.
So that was, fraud against the court for me to have to pay him. And it was fraud against the court for me to have to pay his lawyer fees to Jay White, which was another $15,000. So in August of 2022, literally Knut's gave me an indigent form because they had given me so much money to pay out. I was literally ordered to pay out more than I was making in the courts, between the $2,800 a month child support, the $70,000, and the $15,000 in attorney's fees.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're given an indigent form, that means you're not able, to pay for things.
Right.
Not that you're making this amount of money and the court's ordered you to pay so much out that you can't pay. That doesn't even make sense. Like, I don't even think that's even legal. So then they gave me the court-appointed attorney, which was Everson.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a whirlwind. So the problem is this $70,000 was supposed to be paid at like $20,000 up front and then $800 a month. I have already paid $55,000. So I had already paid $40,000 to Brad Urban. The other $30,000 was supposed to come out of the retirement account.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a retirement account that's between $30,000 and $35,000. So I was never like in contempt, because when we went to court and I was like, I'm having to pay child support and this and that, and like they made me pay the guardian ad litem, they made me pay everybody. Like I was having to pay everybody, even though I was the victim of the problem. So they literally gave me to all this to pay out, and then I couldn't afford my own lawyer. So I'm having to pay his lawyer fees, but then I can't afford my own lawyer, and they have to give you a free lawyer.
And that's even
read it.
unconstitutional to pay lawyer fees. It's totally unconstitutional extortion.
So I had already filed, when I get all these orders, I filed in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals did kick back everything. So I filed in Superior Court. So in Superior Court, I filed in November or December of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was November. And then they kept my case open from November of 2022 to December of 2023. So during that whole time, I should have never had to pay, never could have gotten any more district court orders, because I have an open Supreme Court case of North Carolina. So that's a big issue. Is in February of 2023, Jay White was telling all the courts, both Judge Wilhelm and Judge Knut's, that my Supreme Court case was dismissed. It wasn't dismissed. Their attempt to dismiss my case was dismissed. So their dismissal was dismissed. So they legally could not give me a gatekeeper order, a gag order, and withhold me from having permanent custody trial or ever presenting any of my evidence in February of 2023, because I had an open Supreme Court case. So being in the higher courts actually protects you from the lower courts. But what's been happening is people are getting orders in the higher courts. Like Amy Gideon got an order to receive her children, but the lower court, district court, still kept her from her for a year. That's a lawsuit right there.
Mhm.
So this guy named Mike Silver, he's over all the judges, training the judges. So he should be held accountable that they follow the Violence Against Women's Act. He should be held accountable um, with our civil rights. He should be held accountable that these judges are educated on how to rule, how to be fair, how to not behave fraudulently, you know?
I think this Mike Silver should be doing random drug testing on these judges as well as lie detector tests and psych evals every 2 years.
Because there's, a lot of these political parties that are hanging out together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Cabarrus County, all these judges went unopposed. So they're just keeping them, they're paying to keep them on the, Judge Knutz and Christy Wilhelm both went unopposed. So you can't even remove the fraudulent activity if you don't have someone else to put in their place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the evil keeps perpetuating itself. It's never ending torture for parents to go into these courtrooms with Knutz and Wilhelm. I can name a couple others, but nothing's resolved. People are being extorted from, sent to jail on taxpayers' dollars.
Oh, and they're sending illegal letters, like cease and assist letters to and Mr. Anderson got put in jail for saying this guy was a liar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like after court was pretty much over.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jay White's a liar. So he got put in jail for 4 days. And then he just got a letter in the mail saying, essentially not saying what he did wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but essentially telling him to keep quiet or he's going to be sued. And there's there's a whole nother DSS attorney right now. It's like KNOCH. It's a whole different DSS attorney. I don't know where Evans is. So, he was the one that was supposed to be taking over Jay White's place. So I don't know if he's the one. This other person is supposed to be taking over Jay White's place of the children because he was still actively how does it take a year to transfer from one person to the other? Because he was trying to close up, I guess, all the people he had illegally taken with false paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an active open lawsuit on Cabarrus County right now, DSS, for all the illegal kidnappings of the children. So I told you there's over 200, I think it's like 230 or something last time I checked, of kids in foster home and group home. And all those kids are getting state money, $800 a kid to the foster home or group home, and the state gets matched that amount. It's like $180 something thousand for keeping kids from their families.
Right. And
it's a money racket.
right. And they're using our Social Security money to do so. The taxpayers don't know that part. Yeah. So this Jay White character, he had you at a civil contempt this past spring. Then he turns it around to criminal on Tuesday.
Hopefully no one signs the order as a criminal contempt. Because I was never given a criminal contempt. And the thing is that's the biggest issue right now. I was never behind in paying the money if Jay White would have written the quadro that he was ordered to write in literally August of 2022, repetitively over and over again. It wasn't just in August of 2022, January of 2023, he was told to do it again in Superior Court, not in Supreme Court, but in Superior Court. We had the documents out. It was like the title to a car, and Goldberg was standing there with Jay White, with Donna Johnson. There was 3 different lawyers and me, and this random Superior Court judge that came from a different county. And they literally said in open court, okay, you have to take this retirement money, and he has to sign over the paperwork, the title for this car. Because, we've been separated since 2019,
Mhm.
and he still hadn't signed over a title
Oh,
to a car. And it was 2022.
oh,
So
gee.
I shouldn't have had to pay him 20,000. First of all, I had to pay him $20,000 for a car that had over 200,000 miles on it.
That's ridiculous.
The car wasn't even worth that. Not even the car wasn't even worth $5,000, and the judge made me pay him 20,000 for it.
I don't know about these judges down there in North
And I was
Carolina.
like, he can take the car. I'm literally not even using it. It was sitting in the driveway. And the thing is I had to pay $15,000 to get the car in working condition,
Oh,
because he was driving it around so manically on drugs that it wasn't even like none of the, I don't know what you call it, like the electronic stuff.
right.
You could drive and nothing was working. Like
Oh,
it wasn't even
yeah.
showing like how fast you were going, the miles per hour, nothing. Everything was just blank.
That should be his problem. Yeah.
He should have had to pick up that car, pay for the fixing it, the $15,000 it costs to fix everything, to get it in a working condition. And then I had to pay $20,000 to him to keep the car that I paid $15,000 to fix. Now I have 4 drivers that would have been happy to take that 20 plus the $15,000, so $35,000, to buy them cars to drive,
Mm-hmm.
you
Right.
know?
Right. Because it's all about the best interest of the children, you know? But it's in the best interest of the pocketbook.
Yeah, of the other team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a part of the fraud. Like, let's see if we can financially drain them until they break. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see if we can do this to them until, so they try to create like, oh, something, all this drive about women are liars, women are crazy, women are whatever. It's this narcissistic attack of how you're responding to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're the problem.
Right.
So getting back to, I've already paid $55,000 out, and we're still waiting on a quadro order from August of 2022 that Jay White just continues to refuse to write, and he's been ordered to write it over and over and over again. Even
Eh,
back in February, it was checked for him to write the quadro order again this February in 2024.
They should be holding him in contempt.
Well, I think what happens is, like, legally, it's like, the best I can explain it is in medical terms, because
Mhm.
I'm a provider over the building, right?
Mhm.
So if the nurses are writing orders that aren't what I said, right?
Right.
Even though they put it in their name, if I approve it, then in the long run, I'm the one like held accountable for it.
Right.
So that's why these lawyers are just doing whatever they want, because ultimately the judge is the one that's supposed to be reprimanded for the problems. But then all the judges have like this law that essentially, if they're a judge, nothing can happen to them. Like they're protected under this bubble.
Yeah, this immunity has got to go.
Yeah.
Qualified immunity.
So the only way that you can get anything done is a federal lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
because Supreme Court, some people are winning in Supreme Court, and they did keep my case open for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
But my issue was, I was told I had a winning order in August of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And then the order never comes. I don't ever get, I
It
should have had full
disappears.
custody of my kids. I
Yeah.
should have, all this financial orders should have ended, sole custody of all 6 of them instead of just the 2. Everything was won. But Donna Johnson, Jay White, Goldberg was part of, with Jay White defending in Supreme Court. Supreme Court, you cannot go in there to defend yourself as a pro se litigant. Only the lawyers can go in there. So essentially they said, oh, it was removed because of your gatekeeper order. I wasn't given a gatekeeper order until February of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I filed it in November into December of 2022. And a gatekeeper order in district court does not affect Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think they gave me remember when I told you I went to Superior Court also in January?
Mm-hmm.
I went to Superior Court in January, and then I went in February to try to have my permanent hearing. Both of those court cases, they gave me a gatekeeper order. So they put a gatekeeper order in Superior Court and a gatekeeper order in District Court, saying, oh, I was filing in the wrong courts for things. But nobody ever heard me anywhere. They just kept telling me, even the Court of Appeals said I needed to refile twice. And at the second time when they turned it back and said I needed to refile again, I said, I'm just going to Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And so Supreme Court just held it open and did nothing. So now we're in federal court.
And this was filed yesterday or the day before?
It was filed on Wednesday of this week. So that would have been the 20th, November 20th, 2024.
And there's 6 of you on there. So, people are filing these federal lawsuits because they're not being heard and their evidence is being suppressed or thrown out or just not even read by these judges.
Right. So,
because I know you are truly suffering from all of this that should not have ever happened to you.
And they're just trying to wait out my time so that my kids age out.
It's so wrong.
But I keep paying my ex-husband. I mean, my ex-husband right now, there's a car. He has 3 cars in his driveway. One of the cars was my 17-year-old's to drive, but I told you he refuses to pay car insurance on her. So she never was allowed to drive it to my house, only when he was with her. So it's a control issue, like acting like he gives her freedom and I don't have a car for her, So this week it's been like he's been threatening her. He's going to sell that car that is supposedly hers. And then now she's like, I'm going to buy a car and can I put it in your name so you can pay the car insurance? It's just like the cycling of the crazy stuff these narcissists tell them. And you're like, what is even coming out of your mouth? Like, why would you buy a car and put it in my name? But I told you, when I went to go buy my first daughter a car at 16, I was buying her like a used SUV. And he was like screaming at her and screaming at me on the phone that if I didn't put that car in his name, that she couldn't have it. But I was getting a loan on half of the car. So it was like maybe 20 grand. I was going to pay for half of it and then get a loan on half of the car. How the hell do I get a loan in his name
Yeah, he's a personality disorder, all right.
But the thing is my kids, like, they're just screaming at me back what he says.
Right.
And they think whatever they say is reality. And if I just go along with what the crazy outrageous things that they say, then everything would just be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm paying your father $2,800 a month for you and your brother, he should be paying for your cars and car insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
I have to put my foot down on that. I can't work any harder. I can't work more than 2 jobs, going on to 3 jobs. And neither of my kids work right now because he won't now. He's selling the car or
Oh,
whatever he's doing so that they can't get around. You
I hope
know,
I hope they can see this, that he's so controlling over them.
I mean, I think eventually they'll see it, but it's like,
Oh,
it has to be like a God thing. Like,
mhm.
I'm just praying that all demonic ties to my children are cut off and that the lies of the enemy are that there's confusion in the enemy's camp and all the darkness comes to light. Me and my younger kids, and even this child wrote one of the songs, the 17-year-old. We just wrote a whole worship album that we're about to send off for copyright this week.
Oh,
And
good.
I always like say this to people. One of those songs I actually it's just the word of God, but it's like, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Anything done in darkness will come to light, and the plans of the enemy will fail because the plans he has for you are good. And
Mhm.
everything that the enemy tries to steal, it says in the word of God that God's going to return it sevenfold.
Mhm. Mhm.
Every minute that was taken. I mean, look at Amy Betts, for her kids. Her ex-husband spent all this time trying to keep her kids away and doing all this stuff. And one of them, is living back with her in his little tiny house that Raphael helped build
Yeah.
out back. And then, um, the other one's in school. But so I just said it comes around, but like that part of your life is so traumatic when all your life was about being a mother. For a decade or 2
Mhm.
decades of your life was all about, my entire life was being a mother. I didn't know. I was working still as a nurse, but
Mhm.
all I did was take care of people, either out on the job, you know, elderly patients, or traumatic. I haven't always taken care of just elderly patients because I did ER, and it was, infant to adult. But now I'm more over elderly patients. But
Mhm.
just we what I'm just focusing on is this 1983 act today, is
Mhm.
like, that we get justice on that our civil rights have been violated, our rights have been violated. um it doesn't even make any sense that they will make you to pay out more than you're making in a month, and then have to give you an indigent form, an
Right.
indigent and a free lawyer. They want you to have a free lawyer so that they can do stuff to you through the lawyer. Like, I
Mhm.
think that my lawyer has, filed for a motion for custody for my children, and even my own lawyer's filings are gone.
Ah,
So I'm asking before this Christmas that all my orders from Mecklenburg County are returned with the 7 days on and off, that there's no child support. Like, he's filed for all 4 of them on his taxes for 4 years. And my
wow.
daughter's like, it's a really old order that says, like, that I paid the taxes. He receives, he writes Sutton and Blake on the taxes, and I write um Julia and Addison on my taxes because they're the middle two. But he hasn't done that in 4 years, and literally he must have showed her a sentence from an old order, because she keeps texting me It
Mhm.
says in the order that you're responsible for me and Julia, and he's responsible for Sutton and Blake. No, it was taxes. Like, you can't, in a custody order, you cannot order parents to buy cars and cell phones. That's not even
Right.
part of like child care.
No.
That doesn't even, that's not in child support. That's nothing, like, you can't make parents buy that. And kids that are 16, their car insurance is like $250 a month.
Ugh.
And that's insurance fraud, to have your kid driving without car insurance.
Oh, yes. Yes. So now you're just waiting on Tuesday. This is terrible.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that you filed this 42 US Code subsection 1983. And if people don't know what that is, it's a civil rights law that allows individuals to sue state or local officials for the violation of their constitutional or statutory rights. And you've got 6 people on this lawsuit. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we have at least 6 people. I probably know 10 people that could all get together and sue Jay White
Mhm.
personally for the same thing. So
I think people should.
it's anyone that has issues with Jay White at Hartsell Williams, or his brother, or Merritt White, or anyone in that, there, we just need to all get together and go ahead and file a lawsuit on him too,
Mhm.
because this is just a movement and continual fight, because these people need to be held accountable for what's going on.
Yes. Oh, yes. Ugh. Well, I'm so glad you came on. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I just think it's just pertinent that I'm continually taken to court and threatened over money,
Mhm.
made to pay out, but they're keeping my older kids from me all but 4 days a month. So you're illegally made to pay out everything you have, but keep your kids from you. So that was part of the reason, like, Amy Betts had more of a case, because they were trying to make her pay all this money out, and they weren't letting her see her kid.
Mm, mm-mm,
So
mm.
the only reason why I haven't, but there's a lot of people that have supervised visitation or not seeing their kids at all. The only reason why they're letting them see them supervised, or saying that, instead of, like, every other weekend, like,
Mhm.
they have to be able to see them, but they don't want them to have any overnights, because overnights counts as custody. So,
Right.
like, there's a girl right now. She literally has her children all during the day, doesn't work. She's the child care provider, but her ex-husband takes the children at nights. I said, "Why would you even agree to that?" She
Ugh.
said, "Because I get to be with my kids a lot more than he does." I said, "But it doesn't matter who has them during the day. It only
No.
counts nights. The
Right.
nights only count for child support." So in the end, like, they just filed a child support on her. I said, "In the end, you're gonna have to be the one paying for child support." Well, I don't work. Like,
Mm.
I don't work, so there's nothing I could pay him. Well, they'll still make you pay somehow,
Oh, yeah.
and
I heard
it's a ploy.
right, right. I heard that they will go after you for child support if you're not working. They'll just do it at a minimum wage. What they would take you at minimum wage for child support.
Even if you're the stay-at-home mom for the
Right.
last decade of your life, it
They don't
doesn't
care.
matter. You
No.
need to start peeing out money from somewhere.
Right. Yeah, this Title 4D has to go as well as family court and all of this destruction on our children.
But there's a little bit of a win with just even filing the 1983 lawsuit, because justice is gonna come.
Mhm.
And these women that they're trying to silence and attack and shut up and, you know, fine and, jail and do all these things to keep them quiet, God is gonna be the vindicator. just watch God. Just watch God, because his vindication is going to be stronger. I mean, your judge just dropped dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mean to laugh, but it's all in God's timing. I mean,
You're going to feel sorry for when God vindicates for these people, because it's going to be worse than you could ever imagine for them. Because God doesn't play. He doesn't allow you to continue to be. So people either need to turn to him and start getting their life in order and their behavior in order, or some punishment is coming their way. You
oh,
know? And
definitely.
I don't fear Jay White. I do not fear him. I do
No.
not fear Matthew Bledsoe. I do not fear Brad Urban. I want to tell you, the day that Brad Urban tried to kill me, drag me across the house, all that stuff, choke me out, everything. The power of God was on me so strong, Marianne. I wish there was a video camera over me of how I was behaving. I was responding in love. Like, you know how people say that people that are Christians and they say they got a gun held to their head or something like that, and how they responded was just like a supernatural response, right? Like it was not me. It was something that came over me, because I even have said, like, I'm not like Jesus. Like, you're taking me to the cross to hang me on all these situations and persecute me for this situation. I'm not going to walk up there quietly and be hung on the cross. I'm going to kick and scream all the way there, you know? But when there's been some really big supernatural moments where my life could have been taken with how bad it was, and he responded through me, because there's no way I could have responded like that. I would have fought back. I would have, but it was like he came over me in that situation
And
and
shielded
protected
you.
my life, protected my life. It was like those demons had to flee, and he ended up leaving the house, and I could lock all the doors.
Yeah. It's people say, well, karma's real, but I think God is real, or maybe God and karma are the same thing, but I associate it with God. But I'm so glad you came on, and we'll have to see what happens on Tuesday, which,
Well, thanks for getting the word out about the lawsuit. I'm sorry everybody else couldn't come on together, but I've been excited about getting on together just to announce the lawsuit since, for days now. And I just didn't want to hold back just the announcement of that any longer. Um, so thank you for your
oh,
time.
most definitely. And how can people, well, I think on our last podcast, you wanted people to come through me if they wanted to talk to you. So I'll just put down my website, and people can, if they have any questions, I'll let you know.
Okay. I
So,
appreciate that.
well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And thank you, Amy Palacios, for speaking out. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.